Hello, how are you doing and welcome back to the channel. Is the 2023 Grand Slam winning Ireland team the best Ireland team ever? I'm going to say yes, and in this video I'm going to explain why. I'm going to compare them to the other Grand Slam winning teams of the Six Nations era and just look at this team as a whole and why I think this is the best Ireland team we've ever seen. I'm sure there's lots of people with different views on this out there, so make sure you drop a comment down below. And also, if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you can hit that like button on the video and also subscribe to the channel as well. All right, let's get into it. So how are the heads this morning, Ireland fans, particularly any of you who were in Dublin over the last week or so? A heck of a week for the Irish with Cheltenham, with St. Patrick's Day, and of course with the Six Nations Grand Slam against England yesterday. A lot tougher in the end, I think, than a lot of people predicted, myself included. I thought Ireland would wipe the floor with them. They didn't, but they did get the victory, and it means they have won another Grand Slam. And you kind of forget, I think, I've seen a few people in the papers this morning pointing out to the fact that if you're kind of in your 20s and you're Irish, this is the third Grand Slam that you might have seen, whereas they had to wait a long time before that slam in 2009. But as the question I posed in the title of this video and the question I've posed at the beginning, is this the best Irish team ever? I think yes, and I'm going to explain why. I'm going to start off by looking back at the other Grand Slams they've done in the Six Nations era. So the first one of those was way back now in 2009, which I think was a great Irish team. They were really strong defensively, weren't they? They were kind of more, I think, known for their defensive work. I think that Grand Slam was built more on the defensive work. They had quite a few tight games. I don't think they blew teams away in the same fashion that we have seen them do probably in 2018 and also in 2023 as well. And it was a great Irish team. It was a fantastic Grand Slam. But the reason that I would put this current crop of Irish players above that crop in 2009 is, you remember that last game in the Six Nations in 2009? Away in Cardiff, playing Wales, 15-17, Ireland won it. But Stephen Jones actually did have a penalty which would have given Wales the lead towards the end of that game, which he missed. So it's just one of those slams, and it doesn't take anything away from it, but there's probably a few moments in there that you look at and you say, this could have easily gone another way. I think the dominance of this current crop of Irish players and this Six Nations is maybe what stands them apart, really. 2018 as well, I think it was a different style of Irish team, wasn't it? They scored a lot of points, actually, 160 points in that championship for Ireland, which is towards the higher end of the spectrum. If you look at teams that have done the Grand Slam in the Six Nations era, that's right up there in terms of points scored. So they were a more potent attacking weapon. But again, I don't think they were quite as convincing as this current crop. You look back at that first game in Paris where it was reliant on that ridiculous Johnny Sexton drop goal, and that was amazing. I'm not taking anything away from them, but again, that was just a game that you look at that could have gone either way. And that's something I mentioned in looking back at both of those slams, because I think when you look at this Irish team in 2023, how many of these games in the Six Nations could have gone either way? I don't think any of them. I think Ireland have been comprehensive. I know they have been pushed. They were pushed against England. The Italians caused them some problems. France came back at them in kind of the second half of that game. Scotland were very good in the opening 40 minutes. But overall, across 80 minutes, against every team in this Six Nations, Ireland, I think, have just looked comfortably better than them. And I think for me, this is the most dominant slam we've seen from Ireland. And I would even go as far to say it's one of the most dominant slams we've seen in the history of the Six Nations. I think England in 2003 were probably more dominant, and statistically, I know they come top of a lot of categories. That 2003 England team was incredibly good. I know France last year were a very good Grand Slam winning team as well. But I just think this Ireland team have been one of the most dominant sides we've seen in the history of the Six Nations. And it's a major reason why I think they're the best Irish team ever. It's always difficult comparing eras as well, isn't it? I mean, I'm not going to mention the Irish Grand Slam back in the 40s because the game was just so wildly different. You could argue, and I'd probably agree with you, the game is so wildly different from that 2009 Irish team as well, but it's still in the professional Six Nations era, so that's why I'm including it. So I think they've been incredibly dominant, and it's also just down to how well-rounded this team is at the moment. Think of everything that's actually gone against them in this championship. And ahead of that first game, they lost Jamison Gibson Park to injury, didn't they? Coming up against Wales, second Warren Gatland era, etc., etc. And they just came in, did a job on Wales, completely quieting the crowd in Cardiff. And in fact, think of the injuries they dealt with throughout the Six Nations. In particular, that game against Scotland, Van der Fleer throwing in at the line-out, Cian Healy at hooker in the scrums. They've lost a couple of their main front rowers in Ian Henderson and Tyg Byrne, but they have the quality to deal with it. They have the strength in depth in this squad, and I think that is something which stands this current crop of Irish players out from all those other teams. Those other teams have great players in them of, you know, Ronan O'Gara and Brian O'Driscoll and Paul O'Connell. I could go on, Jamie Heaslip, loads of players who are brilliant Irish players. But did those squads, did that group of Irish players have the consistency, have the strength in depth that this Irish team has? I don't think Ireland have ever had this strength and depth. I think they are up there with some of the best teams we've ever seen in terms of the strength and depth they have within that team. So as I say, injuries they've dealt with really well. I also think an important factor is how well they've pulled away in games, particularly against Italy. They built a lead really, really quickly, and then they were holding on, and Italy pushed them pretty close, but they still got that victory. The way in which they beat England in the kind of final 20 minutes, they just took the game away from them. I think that's always a trademark of some of the best teams. You look at their attacking game, we could talk about that, and something I've mentioned a lot on this channel. Many of you would have heard me say it already, but the way in which they attack, I think, is really impressive. I think they are a cut above certainly all the other teams in the Northern Hemisphere in terms of their attacking shape that we're seeing at the moment. And also their defensive work as well. They're a really good defensive team. They are a really well-rounded, well-coached as well. Andy Farrell and that coaching team has done an absolutely brilliant job. It's a lined up system. If you want to talk about the schools rugby, if you want to talk about Leinster and the provincial rugby, it's just working at this moment in time for Ireland. I don't think there has ever been a time in their history where they have had all those things going for them. And there's so many different factors, as I've kind of listed them there and mentioned them all. But this is the best Irish team, I think, we have ever seen. So drop a comment down below. Let me know whether you agree with me. If not, which Irish side would you go for? And just give me your thoughts generally on Ireland. I think they've been awesome this Six Nations. They are deserved Grand Slam champions. The question now as well, can they do it in the World Cup? That's a video for another day, which I will certainly touch upon. But congratulations once more to Ireland. Also, do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Like the video as well. As I've said already, drop a comment down below. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.